All right, I just want to welcome everybody to our May Montevilla Neighborhood Association Board meeting and general membership meeting. I want to extend a very special welcome to Portland City Council candidates for position number 3 to brave this horribly hot weather and atmosphere to be with us tonight. So thank you very much, and we'll have a little forum. There's agendas over here if anyone hasn't grabbed one yet, and hopefully we'll just get started because we're running a little bit behind already. So generally, can someone do introductions? Sure. Okay, we'll just do general introductions. Just name, where you're from in the neighborhood, and what brings you out tonight. My name is David Lynn. I'm the chair. I live around 81st Holiday, and yeah.
My name is Brad Donahue, and I live on 87th Avenue, just off the start.
I'm Amanda Rhodes, Vice Chair, Mandy's Chair, and I live at 80th and Anvil.
My name is John Rotter. I'm the Public Safety Chair. I live off of 81st.
Jonathan Ogden. I'm at 94th and Gleason. I'm in Parks.
Amy Rainey, I live at 81st and Morrison.
My name is Paul Hawkins. I'm at 76th and Pine. I'm beside the building.
That's great. I live at 92nd and Salmon.
Shauna, I live on 82nd. All of you on
Hi, I'm Olive. I live by 75th, just south of Central Square, Delegate. I'm Katie. I'm also at 76th and Pine.
Chris Ollinger, I live at 78, basically at Stark. We'll go back there.
I'm Tom. I'm at 80th and Gleason.
That's it. There's 80th and Gleason.
I'm Bill. I live in 26. I want 26.
I'm Diane Red. I'm here for the Friends of Montego Park, and I live at 70th and Pine.
Dan Lynn, 81st and Holiday.
Matthew Ford, I'm at 87th and Hawthorne. I'm here to hear the candidate.
Good evening. I'm Tom Bluth. I'm the campaign manager for Stuart Emmons, and I live in the Overlook neighborhood.
Ron Thrasher, 93rd and Hawthorne.
Good evening, Andrew Wilkins, 80th and Oregon.
I'm Diane Dixon Lawrence. I grew up in Montevilla at 80th and Taylor, and then up on Mount Tabor. So I'm very interested in the park thing, and I'm also a member of the Montevilla Kiwanis Club. I went to the Festus School.
My name is Kyle Curtis. I'm the campaign manager for Andrea Valderrama, and I live at 79th.
So, thank you for the campus. Just say your name. Sure.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrea Valderrama. I am candidate for Portland City Council position 3, and I live at 102nd and Holiday.
Hi everybody, I'm Stuart Emmons, position 3, City Council. Oh, I live in Goose Hollow.
Hi, my name is Loretta Smith, and I'm running for position 3, Portland City Council, and I live in the Wilkes District.
Good evening, I'm Joanne Hardesty, and I'm running for Portland City Council position 3, and I live in Gateway.
Wonderful. Thank you everybody for being here. The ground rules just for the meeting. Please be polite and respectful to everybody. Please speak to the issue, not to the person. And if a person has to get I'll give one warning, and then after the second warning, the person will be asked. I'm required to say that I don't enjoy it. So we'll just jump right into it. We're going to get right into the candidate forum. The format will be a 2-minute introduction around the table. Then we have 4 general questions that have kind of been in all candidate forums, or a lot of the ones I've seen. It'll be police reform and accountability, housing and homelessness, affordability or livability in the neighborhoods, and then finally the role of the neighborhood associations vis-a-vis Portland City Council, and then a final 2-minute statement. So hopefully, if there's some extra time, we might have some time for some questions. So with that, we'll just start on the left side of the table, and we'll just go around the same way for the whole time. And I'll hold up my sign when your time's up.
Well, thank you all so much for braving this heat in this room to join us. I'm really excited to share a little bit more with you about why I'm running. Again, my name is Andrea Valderrama. I am running for Portland City Council position 3, and I'm running because I see a new Portland around us that's changing pretty significantly. Even the past few years have changed drastically, and those of us who have been here longer can remember a Portland that was much different. And so with these changes, I really believe that we need new leadership that is reflective of these changes, but also that understands the opportunities and the challenges that these changes are bringing into our neighborhoods. 3 of those challenges that I want to quickly cover and will address as your next city commissioner include our housing and homelessness crisis. It is absurd how expensive the cost of housing is getting, not just rental, but even home ownership. As someone who does live in outer East Portland, this is something that I know is affecting every neighborhood, and particularly this area of town, pretty significantly. This is a really big issue for me. The next issue is transportation infrastructure, and this comes pretty closely tied to the first issue. I firmly believe that we are living in a Portland that is unsafe to walk, and when we are living in a neighborhood where it is unsafe to take, for instance, my daughter across the street, that's a problem. So we need leadership who understands how to build transportation infrastructure equitably, partner that with housing, and move forward. The last issue is around jobs. I want to make sure that we have addressed our affordability crisis, that we are providing the right economic opportunities for Portlanders to be able to live and thrive here. The perspective that I bring is one of a mom of a rambunctious 3-year-old. I currently serve on the David Douglas School Board. I'm in my 2nd term, and I also am a senior policy advisor in City Hall and have been working there for the past 6 years. And so these are the perspectives that I bring to address these and other challenges as your next city commissioner. Thank you.
I'm going to go out in front. I'm Stuart Evans, and I am running for Portland City Council because our city needs a housing and planning expert to get us beyond this crisis. I'm an architect, planner, and innovator. For the last 20 years, I've been working with community groups on housing issues. There are solutions for people experiencing homelessness. There are solutions for affordable housing for working families. We need someone with a successful track record delivering housing. I'm that candidate. I moved to Portland in 1976, and it was relatively clean and safe, and almost everyone had a home that was affordable. But that's far from the case today. In a Portland with our talent and resources, it doesn't need to be this way. Portland can and should do better. I will bring decades of real-world private sector experience actually getting projects built and not just talking about them. Through neighborhood plans across the city, I've worked with community groups on finding common ground and making good things happen. And I've worked for the city bureaus or with the city bureaus for my entire career for my architecture work. And I know we can do things better. Some people ask me if I ever talk about anything besides housing. And I say, rarely, because a safe, warm, and dry home is the foundation for a successful life, a successful city, and should be our top priority. 3 years ago, the mayor declared a housing emergency. And where are we today? We're in worse shape. So there are good candidates in this race. I hope many of us will be on city council, but I'm the candidate with the experience, the resources, and the passion to move us beyond our homelessness and affordable housing crisis. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Loretta Smith, and I'm running for Portland City Council because I want to be a champion for the most vulnerable. I've sat on the Oklahoma County Commission for the past 8 years and fought for the most vulnerable in our community, focusing on young people, seniors, and creating jobs for our community. Prior to that, I worked for U.S. Senator Ron Wyden for 21 years. He's been one of the biggest champions that I know for people in the state of Oregon. And what I see here too is what most of the candidates see. We have an economic boom here, but there are a lot of folks who are not benefiting from this, unprecedented prosperity. And I think you need to have someone who has a track record. Someone who is not just talking about what they will do, someone who can tell you what they've done. When community members came to me and said our kids are graduating from high school, I directed dollars to go to community-based organizations so that they can increase the number of kids who graduate from high school. When folks said that they needed technical assistance, they need computers, I passed a resolution that gave all of our old computers after 3 years free geek. And now those computers go into low-income families and to students and nonprofit organizations who wouldn't otherwise be able to pay for them. When people said we need jobs in this community, I created the Inclusive Fund, which put $500,000 from Multnomah County and $500,000 from the city to give small businesses and women and people of color startup funds to do their own businesses. I listen to people. I don't go and make policies without having stakeholders at the table. I want to make sure that we have good paying, living wage jobs. In doing so, you need to have someone who has the track record, the relationships on the federal, on the local, and on the state level. And I plan to fight for you all and give you the things that you want as a city council person.
Good evening, I'm Joanne Hardesty, and it's absolutely wonderful to be coming to the end of this 9-month journey. I have talked to thousands of Portlanders. I have had 98 house parties. I have over 1,400 individual donors, because this campaign from the beginning have been about the people in the city of Portland who don't have a voice at Portland City Council, who don't believe they're heard. So my number one campaign platform is access, because I believe access matters, whose voice is heard. 9:30 a.m. Wednesday morning doesn't work for most people. And we should be engaging as many people as possible in big public policy decisions. We have to not criminalize people for being houseless. We have to make sure as a community we have housing at every income level in every neighborhood. I've been working with you because we don't want to lose our farmers market, because this land has been sold and we don't know what's going to go on. And so it was a no-brainer. Most of the work I'm known for, I did for free, not because I had a title, not because I was in a position of power, but because I felt it just wasn't fair. And somebody had to stand up and say, it's not fair. And so I can promise you that I don't make decisions without talking to people in all corners of the city of Portland. And I've done that throughout this entire campaign. And I can tell you housing and houselessness are the number one issues on people's mind. Transportation and the lack of transportation infrastructure is number 2. I can tell you that people in Portland care passionately, but you haven't been asked to help. And I'm here today asking for your help. Please vote for me, Portland City Council, position 3. Thank you.
Okay, the first question will be in regards to police reform and accountability and funding, which is kind of a relevant situation because, as we've said, there was an incident just today on the other side of the border from Montevilla where a use of force incident happened. So, let's get to that. I was just going to keep the same one.
We should vote too. We don't want anybody to have to go first all the time.
Okay, sure, just one over then. Sorry.
Okay, sounds good. Is that okay? Okay. We're still trying to find out what happened at the Burger Mill, or I'm sorry, at the Burger King. So I can't really comment on that until some more details come out, but, so let me go back to, what was it, 2-3 weeks ago, at the homeless shelter where there was a fatal shooting there. And 20 police came, the dogs came, and for somebody who was, obviously having a mental health breakdown. And it was just, overkill, and there should have been mental health specialists coming out for that call and whatever. And so that was a glaring example of, we need to do something about our police. I just saw an incident in a parking lot near where I live. Somebody was having a mental health breakdown, and the police did a really good job. I mean, they had firefighters came pretty quickly for emergency medical work and whatever, and I was pretty impressed. So, and I've also done some ride-alongs with the police. So it's not just all bad. I just think we need to bring a different level of community policing into our community. I'm an advocate for more police because with some caveats that we need to have better training, more mental health professionals going out on calls where that's needed. And I really think that our police, when I did the ride-along, a lot of the police I found lived in Oregon City or elsewhere outside of Portland. We need to have people who live in Portland, who are from our communities, policing our communities, and they need to look like our communities. So I think there's work to be done on our police, and I think Portland, I talked to Tom Potter a lot about community policing. He's been a great mentor for me in this area, and I think we can do a lot better with demilitarizing our police and making them more of a community police force.
I'm not sure what happened at the Burger King, and like Stuart, I have to get more information, but the fact of the matter is, we do need police reform. We need to figure out how to deal with folks who are in crisis and folks who are people of color. And what I have said in forums, and I've said to the leaders at the police and with Mayor Wheeler, is that we need additional training, sensitivity, cultural diversity training, at the same time that we're adding police. What some people don't want to hear and don't realize is that Portland is now a big city. We have big city problems. We have needs far greater for public safety than we did 5 years ago or even 10 years ago. For the last 5 years, we've had anywhere between 35 and 45,000 people move into the city. So with that comes a greater need for public safety. I know we need additional public safety officers. There are two things that we do as city council people. We deal with infrastructure, permitting, police, and fire. Those are basic missions, is public safety. We have less police officers today than we did 15 years ago. I'm a single parent. I have a 27-year-old son. A son who's been stopped by the police. And let me tell you something. Even though my son has been stopped, I still think we need additional police. So that's not the issue, because some people will tell you that the police, they just stop people of color. Yeah, and they stop and they prevent and they come out and prevent other things from happening too. So you won't get this woman. I'm not an angry black woman. I am an effective black woman who understands the need for public safety in all of our neighborhoods. We have a lot of folks who are homeless. I was the one standing up against my board saying, keep Wapato open so we can get homeless people off the streets.
Police will never solve our houseless crisis. Police will not solve our lack of mental health services. Police have a very specific job, and we have moved police far beyond what their basic job is. Their job is to solve crime and prevent crime. We have the wrong end of our public safety system responding to people with mental health issues. I believe retraining our 911 operators to deploy firefighters who are grounded in our communities, are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and have never killed anybody who was in a mental health crisis. Today, 80% of firefighter calls are for people with healthcare issues. We should be using the best part of our public safety system to deal with people in crisis, not people who, you cannot tell me that one man stabbing himself in the neck with 20 police officers yelling at him and a dog. We could not take one man into custody when there was nobody in harm's way. Had not a community member had a cell phone, the story we would have heard would have been totally different. So it is my belief, you cannot add new officers into a system that must be reformed, revised, and rethought. And I have trained at the state facility, but haven't been allowed to train at the Portland facility because they think you have to be a police officer to train police officers. I'm looking forward to working with Chief Outlaw to making sure that we use public safety officers in the appropriate way. Thank you.
So again, I am also waiting to hear more information on what happened. I think what scares me as someone who lives right around the corner from 100th and Stark, again, I live on 102nd and Holiday, is that this is an experience that I'm finding happens more and more around all parts of our city. The fact that shots were fired unbeknownst to the officer, whether or not this person was armed, is problematic. So we have to look at what is the response that officers are allowed to have, and is that an appropriate one? Is there an alternative that we can train and provide for officers to respond so that a different outcome could potentially happen? I firmly believe that ultimately the conversation around police reform is one that's complex, and it has many contradictions. And I absolutely agree that we need reform and we need it now. But on the one hand, I have people in my family who have absolutely been racially profiled by police, and I myself have been stopped because of the color of my skin. But on the other hand, I am the only one who directly works in City Hall and understand that there is a capacity issue in the police bureau, that police are responding to calls and they are overworked and they're overtired. And in those scenarios, they're more likely to make decisions that are impacted by personal biases. And so I believe that there does need to be reform, but it's not just the police bureau, right? This incident is a result of something that happened with the sheriff's office. So we have to really look at how is the city working with the sheriff's office, how are we working with our 911 bureau, with our Bureau of Emergency Management, with our fire bureau, with all of the public safety bureaus as a whole, and look at ways that we can reform the bigger picture here. How is city council taking responsibility, not just the police commissioner? So this is something that, again, takes an understanding of the commission form of government, how we work with all of the bureaus and make sure that we're moving reform forward.
And so the next question was on housing and homelessness. We hear about Walkerville, we hear about shelters like the one started with the Leaky Roofs and stuff like that. Even though we hear about funding, we don't seem to be seeing a lot of more shelter housing.
You're right. Sitting on the county commission, I can tell you exactly what's going on. We spend anywhere between $50 million on top of existing services for homeless shelters. The city adds about $25 million this last fiscal year, and we add 25. We are down by 300 temporary shelter beds. After they closed, the joint office closed the strip club. We put folks into motels that we couldn't really afford to keep up or sustain. So we stopped doing that too. We're sitting on a pile of money that normally would be used for homeless shelters. And I guess the thought is we'll just save it for next year. There's some big master plan to buy something that I don't know about yet. As you can tell, I have really strong feelings about this because I've been watching this for 8 years. I told Mark Jolan, look, we put homeless shelters in communities, we give them 2 weeks' notice, you don't tell them what's happening, you don't give them time to figure out what we can do to be helpful to the community, to see how that's gonna change the dynamics of any community. I taught them about the foster cow shelter that they were gonna put in for 2 weeks before Christmas. So I just don't like doing stuff like that. We need to figure out how to get permanent housing. What I would do is, with that $50 million, I'd take half of that and go buy a land bank, a bunch of multiplexes, so we can buy down affordability, so we can put people in affordable housing. There's going to be a certain amount of people who will not be able to get jobs or work to be able to afford their housing. So I take that other $25 million and put it into wraparound services that they need. And then at that point, we've basically, over the last 4 years, we've created a cottage industry of temporary housing shelters that we didn't have before. We're sinking in millions of dollars paying for staff for temporary housing shelters. When we could have been buying up places that we could put people in instead of putting people in leaky, rat-infested homeless shelters. It's just cruel. We could have opened up Wapato.
Housing and houselessness are two very separate issues. We have people living on our streets who cannot afford first, last, security deposit, rent, pet deposit, and pet rent to live in an apartment in the city of Portland today. In fact, I recently read that you need $23 an hour in order to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in the city of Portland today. Most people don't make $23 an hour. And so what we need is housing at every income level in every community. What's interesting is that rather than using police resources on people who are houseless, for a tenth of the cost, we could hire houseless people to go around and clean up the garbage. We could bring mobile laundry and food, and because when people have nowhere to go, to criminalize them for merely existing is inhumane. And that's not the city I want to live in. Yes, we have some people on our street who are involved in drug use and alcohol abuse, but not more than people who are housed. The only difference is you don't see the ones who are housed. And so we have to make sure that we're developing solutions that fit every income level. Some people will never live independently, so we need housing that has services attached to it. And I know that the city of Portland is moving in that direction. I did not want to see elders who in my neighborhood are the ones on the freeway overpass begging for money, living in a jail as a temporary house. Everyone deserves dignity in a place they can afford long term. Thank you.
Affordable housing and the prevention of homelessness has been a top priority, not only in my professional work as a senior policy advisor in Portland City Hall, but also as a school board member. I get reports every month of the increasing number of students who are houseless in our district, and it's appalling. This is absolutely an issue that is not only impacting people who are on the streets, but families who are forced to couch surf, to live in hotels, people that we don't see. So this is something that is personal to me, that I'm very much committed to. I think one piece of this that we have to make sure leadership is paying attention to is around policy advocacy. We need additional tools at the local level, like rent control, like just cause eviction. And this issue is not just around renters and affordability of rental properties, but it's also about affordability as homeowners. As a first-time homeowner in outer East Portland, I know that one of the worries that I have in my neighborhood is the increasing in our property taxes every year is something that is higher out here than in other parts of the city. And as someone who is living currently with 8 other individuals to make this work, I worry about when my mom is able to move out and what the affordability level looks like then for a family like mine. So this is a very real issue in the housing spectrum. spectrum, not just renters or those on the street, but also homeowners. I'm very interested in continuing a conversation with the current chair on expanding a local voucher program that is currently open for seniors or folks on a on a fixed income. As we know that federal dollars will continue to decrease, we have to make sure that we're preventing homelessness, that we are subsidizing that at the local level. That's already a project that I'm really excited to work on. We also have to look at this as not just new development, but how can we preserve the affordable housing that we currently have, and again, make sure that we're subsidizing that as much as possible. The last thing that I'll say is ultimately this is about affordability. We can't continue to have people working 40, 50 hours a week and still barely making rent, barely making mortgage. We have to look at the job opportunities, the economic opportunities of this as well.
So in about 30 years ago, 28 years ago, I designed a homeless shelter, single room occupancy hotel that I just went to visit, and it still is working great. I worked on shelters back 30 years ago. And through my whole career, I've been working on affordable housing and homeless shelters and homeless housing. And then just recently, for the last 7 years, I've been working on innovative housing since the recession. How can we get unit costs down? I've become an expert on modular housing, and I just designed a little micro unit and working with other people. I want to bring innovation into City Council. So we did a housing bond. All of us, property owners, our property taxes went up $258 million. The city is going to produce 1,300 units of affordable housing someday, somehow, some way, maybe in 4 or 5 years. It is not enough. We have a need of 25,000 to 29,000 units of affordable housing. Our city is not doing the math. I did a part of that housing, the housing bond too, is 300 units of homeless housing, permanent supportive housing. And that's just not enough. I mean, we have 4,200 people, 1,700 people unsheltered on the street, 1,000 students in Portland Public Schools who are homeless. So a month ago, I did the Portland Home Project. It's on my website, StewartEmmonsForPortland.com. You can be happy to talk with you later about it. In 2 years, all people on the street, safe, warm, and dry shelter or housing. In 4 years, 75% of the people who are currently houseless in micro-housing, tiny houses, in housing, and the rest in shelters. There are services, there's job training in here. It's a public-private project. It's reallocating some of our public dollars, the housing bond dollars, and it's also bringing in private dollars and foundation dollars as well, which hasn't really been looked at before. So we need to do something like this. We need to treat this like an emergency, as FEMA would, as other would. If we had an earthquake or a flood, how would we handle it? We'd have everybody off the street. We need to do this with urgency. Thank you.
I'm sorry to limit the time on that issue.
I know. We could talk forever.
With each of you.
That's okay.
But with livability, I think if anybody drives down 82nd, you can see we're in pretty dire state of repair. And then when the city has never been more affluent, people were pretty surprised to hear community centers put on the chopping block for budget cuts. So we speak to livability issues in the neighborhood. And I believe it's
unfortunately, I have lived here long enough and followed the city budget long enough to know this game happens every budget cycle. Every budget cycle, the mayor says, do a 5% cut. Every department puts the community's most favorite programs on the chopping block. And every community gets outraged and come in and jump up and down and yell, and guess what? It gets put back in, and we go through another budget year, right? It's the same old bait and switch. So we need new people who won't participate in the bait and switch, right? If we actually need to take a 5% cut, let's be real about how we can take a cut and invest it in things we say are our priority. So for example, today our general fund dollars, we spend 54% on policing. The police want 93 more officers, the mayor wants 53 more officers. And I gotta tell you, that can't be our priority as a city, that we would spend that much of our general fund dollars, which are supposed to be about our future. We have to ensure that every income level can be able to live and thrive in the city of Portland. That's what livability is about. Livability isn't about more police harassing people. It isn't about more aggressive handling of people who are poor and without resources. If we don't have the money for mental health, then we certainly should not have the money for more cops. Because that's what we're missing, mental health treatment. What we're missing is housing that people can afford to live in at every income level. That's the livability issue. And so when people sell you cops as livability, they're selling you fear. And we cannot afford to fear each other in a community where we're all in it together. Thank you.
So one of the things that I'm really excited to continue to work on, particularly around 82nd and in this part of town, is how to ensure that we are looking at strategies in our public works processes that are preventing and mitigating displacement as much as possible. I was excited to have worked on the 82nd Avenue plan along the corridor with our Bureau of Transportation several years ago. I think that we do have to make sure that we're looking at ways that we don't just create plans, but that we invest in them and move them forward. One way that I believe we can make that happen is through jurisdictional transfer of 82nd Avenue as a whole. Currently, the city doesn't have ownership of it, and that's unacceptable when we know that there are several high crash corridors. For many people, it is dangerous to walk across the street again, as we are living in an area where it is unsafe to walk, where I worry about whether or not I can bring my daughter. That's unacceptable. Anyone shouldn't have to worry about whether or not they can get to or go to wherever they're trying to get to. So that's a big concern for me. Transportation infrastructure and development has been a big part of the work that I've done in City Hall, and I'm very proud of the work that I particularly moved forward on 122nd Avenue. Heard from constituents in the neighborhood that more frequent service along 122nd was necessary, and I worked with TriNet to make sure that that happened in conjunction with new bus facilities and sidewalks and the right infrastructure so that the buses could actually run more frequently at a time when TriNet was saying, oh, well, we don't know if that's possible. And so again, in this livability and displacement prevention conversation, it really is so important to make sure that we have someone who understands the dynamics of each of these jurisdictions, who understands how to move things forward, and who lives here, who gets how dangerous it is, and who wants to make a difference so that when these infrastructure improvements happen, that affordability and livability is preserved for those people who are here now.
So I'm an architect, but I'm also an urban designer, and I sort of fell into doing a lot of urban design around the city. One of my big projects outside the city was in Rockwood. I also did a project in Woodlawn Triangle, designing a livable town center there, worked on Division Street, I've done fire stations for the communities. So I understand livability from a professional point of view. I see livability as, first of all, not walking down the street and seeing somebody sleeping on a doorstep. I see livability as not having my rent going up, as one of my friends did, $550 per month, or my property taxes doubling in the last, whatever it is, 7 years or something. So there's a balance there. Livability is also about transportation. I've also lived in a lot of other cities. I've been in Portland about 28 years now, but I've lived in Brooklyn, New York. I lived in LA. I lived in other cities where I've traveled a lot. I look at what good things we can take from other cities and bring them to our cities. I'm fascinated by, I love the Montebello neighborhood, but I'm fascinated by 82nd because 82nd is the center of our city. And tell that to the people on the west side, and then they started looking at the map and they said, you're right. 82nd I love challenges as an urban designer, and I think that 82nd can actually, I see a vision in the next 10 years where 82nd can become a completely different street than we see it today. And I also see that this area is just a little bit to the west, but also to the east of 82nd, can take more density, can be more livable as far as livability, walkable neighborhoods, so you can walk your kid to school, so you can walk to services, you can get on really good transit and get to work. And I favor a much more robust transit system, and that's what livability is to me. Thank you.
As a city commissioner, I will be someone who doesn't have tunnel vision. This is Madison High School District, right? A few years ago, I was at a forum, and a local resident asked me, she said, do you know anything about this new high school project that Portland Public Schools is partnering with Nike? And if whichever school raises enough money will get their football field done first. Well, I did that because I live in the Jefferson District, but my son went to Lincoln. He had the benefit of playing football on a turf field, which gave him an additional benefit to run faster, have less injuries, and he ended up getting a scholarship to go to the University of Washington. So as I thought about it, every time we played at Madison and Jefferson, he always sprung his ankle. So I said, wow. I said, you know, the kids at Madison who go to school there, 70% of those kids are on free and reduced lunch. Their parents are never going to be able to raise enough money to be one of the first ones. So knowing that we pay for some schools, so I said, well, why don't I do this? Why don't I put an amendment into our budget that says we give Madison $25,000 and we give Jefferson $25,000. That's our other son's school because they had 70% free and reduced lunch. And if we do that, not only will it help with the kids, it's a community kind of thing. It brings pride to the community. Not only will it do a new football field, we'll have a new track, and people want to come and they want to be a part of this. So it passed. And Madison was one of the first schools to get the new turf field. Am I finished for a minute? I'm finished?
Yeah, your time's up.
Okay. Well, that's what you'll get. You'll get someone who doesn't have tunnel vision. We'll try to bring equity.
Okay, for the final question of the night, we hear a lot about civic engagement. Sometimes it's more lip service than actual genuine stuff. But you can just speak to that, and especially about neighborhood associations and how we can engage the city.
So again, my name is Andrea Valderrama. Thank you all so much for hearing us talk at you for so long. You know, I grew up in a first-generation Caribbean American household. A lot of my elders actually don't speak English, and so this is one of the first questions that I think about when we look at our engagement process, not just those who aren't there right now, but those who, even if we did expand a time or a location, would still need additional services provided so that they could engage. That's something that is very important to me, to make sure that we have language, interpretation, services provided. As a mom, I fully recognize and understand the need for childcare and for dinner, food available. I think that that's a really key part of increasing civic engagement, and ultimately engagement around the budget, I have to say, is something that is very much lacking, and not something that we can have just at the point when council is finally deciding and voting, but beforehand, right? So how do we make sure that access, that we are meeting people where they're at beforehand? I think that's something that I've learned over the years is so important. We have to make sure that we're doing a much better job of utilizing the really wonderful resources that we do have in our neighborhood associations, in our diversity and civic leadership engagements, in the coalitions as a whole, and make sure that we're bridging that gap. I think we absolutely can do a better job, and I'm really looking forward to expanding that opportunity and making sure that we do have a better opportunity for people to be engaged, not only in policy, but again in budget and in conversations that are important to you all. That's something that I think is really important to me. But we also have to look internally at the bureaus, and if they're not set up to take that additional input, then we have to make sure that we're reforming them so that they can be better at the project development, at the program development that they're working on, so that way we can make sure that we're actually utilizing that information.
Well, our neighborhood associations are the backbone of our city, and they should be strengthened, and that's what makes our city great. So I did a fire station. My first fire station was Fire 9 down on Cesar Chavez, and I went in with all these kind of preconceived ideas, and I brought it in the community, and there's another person in the community who said wanted to do an old-fashioned looking fire station, and I got really upset, and because I wanted to kind of do it my way. But that wasn't going to happen, and then through that process, I started realizing, hey, wait a minute, maybe we all working together can actually make a better fire station than me just coming in and dropping my idea. So I evolved after Fire 9, and I worked on Woodlawn, I worked on Division, I worked on Downtown Waterfront. That was really crazy. I had people from all diverse backgrounds coming in and thinking different ideas, whatever. And I've learned how to engage people, to bring people to common ground, and to get around one project and agree on something and then do it, and not just talk about it. And that's one of my strengths. I believe that input from the community is an asset and makes the project better. And it's not just something that you come in and do lip service, oh, we're going to do a community meeting just to say we're doing a community. So down on Foster Powell, this is, you heard about them. I'm sure everybody's heard about the homeless shelter down on Foster Powell. I went into that meeting, and 300 people were inside, 300 people couldn't get in or outside. And so invariably, the third question and the famous question comes up. So have you made, is the deal done? Have you signed the lease? And somebody got up and said, yes, the deal is done. Well, why are we even having a community meeting? Somebody said we're supposed to pick the color of the drapes in the homeless shelter. So I worked on a project in the West neighborhood where I worked with the community siting. So we need to bring the communities in at the ground, at the very beginning of projects, and work as in a partnership. And that's the way to get great projects and engage our communities in the most positive way.
Repeat the question.
Yeah, it was just generally about civic engagement in neighborhood associations.
Yeah. I will be looking for a lot of input from neighborhood associations and from the general population. As a county commissioner, I have put on more forums, more town meetings, has more budget items than any other commissioner who sat next to me, over 72 to be exact. And I think the Portland Tribune said, wow, they didn't endorse me. They said, Commissioner Smith does retail politics better than anyone in the field, probably in the city. And because I think it's important. I think it's important to reach out to communities. When we started in the commission, when we would have different items on the agenda, we would call community organizations and say, this is what we're doing, this is on our agenda, come on in. And so we would purposely, deliberately call people and say, this is on the agenda, and they said, thank you. Even if they couldn't come, they appreciated us reaching out to them. Now, I've heard a lot from developers, from neighborhood associations, from just people living in the community, and each of them are doing this, that they don't have access to City Hall. And that's not what you get. Even if we don't agree, I don't shut you off. I've heard some really horrendous stories about elected officials who don't listen to constituencies. And even though we may not agree on a particular policy, I'll have an open door and a front door so you can still come and we can have that two-way conversation. I won't put out any policies without talking to the community first. Because that's bad public policy. You gotta have the stakeholders around the table. And I expect you all to call me. If you see me doing something that I shouldn't be doing, hold my feet to the fire and call me on it. I'd love to be your next city council person.
I have served on East Portland Action Plan for the last 8 years because I've read the audits that show that proportionally East Portland doesn't get its fair share of resources and funding of the neighborhood offices. It has been from its inception, Southwest Portland gets the most money, East Portland gets the least. There have been at least 3 audits in the 28 years I've lived here that have said that is so. There's never been a political courage to change it. And the reality is that neighborhood associations, I hope, are evolving as more people become renters, because I've been around long enough to know that it used to be a pretty exclusive club for only homeowners, and homeowners only had a couple of committees. It was all about transportation, it was all about nuisances, and if you wanted to talk about the people, in my early days here, there was no place at neighborhood association meetings to have that conversation. And in fact, I lived on 15th, and I lived in, this historic district. So you couldn't have a conversation about the home for unwed moms that was up the street, because they just wanted to talk about the next open house tour where people were going to come in and see their beautiful homes. Neighborhood associations should represent the community, right? And hopefully we are in a better place where we're reaching out to renters and we're engaging people at all income levels. Because I have to say, even houseless people live in your neighborhood, and many of them were there before they were houseless. So I hope you're also engaging them and finding out as a community, how do we support each other to make sure that we all have the opportunity for a quality of life. I always say, but for grace go I, because, an accident, a hospitalization, a sick kid or parent, but go I. Thank you.
Great, and we'll just have one more closing statement. Is this the last time you guys speak before the election?
Yeah.
Yes, this is officially it. Yes.
This is the last one. Portland. I believe the next to start was
Okay, great. So how long are we going to do these for?
2 minutes.
Oh, we got 2 minutes.
2 more minutes.
I'll just leave a minute of silence. Just kidding. So, I knew what I was going to talk about. Okay, so I talk a lot about housing and homelessness and housing are the foundation of just about every other issue in the city. Just transportation, schools, equity, on and on and on. It all comes back to housing and where people need to have a safe, warm, and quiet home. So if I were mayor right now, and I had a nice city council to work with, I would say, hey, what if we do something really crazy? What if we say when the weather turns, let's say November 1st, 2018, what if we set a goal to say everybody on our street who is suffering on our street in misery right now, off our street by November 1st, 2018. Everyone said, wow, that's really crazy, you can't do that. Well, if it were a flood, if it were an earthquake, or something else, we could do it. And I don't understand why the city doesn't prioritize something like that, because it is holding, homelessness is holding our entire city back. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace to walk our children down the street, and I've seen it, with tents and tarps down the street and human misery. We are better than this. And I want to get on the city council and do something about it. I believe that a city, Portland, without anybody sleeping on the street, where everybody's in shelter or in safe, warm, and dry housing, would be transformational for our city. It would be so good. It would bring our community together and bring this sense of pride in our city. We would be a national model, and people would come and maybe people on flight attendants wouldn't be saying, don't go to Portland anymore. Portland would become a place that would have solved the problem. over any other West Coast city. And I believe we can do it here. We have a history of doing things like this in Portland, and we should do it again.
I want to thank all of you for coming today because this is what community and democracy is all about. It's about you all in the community, listening, engaging, trying to assess whether or not what we're saying is true. But I want you to know that I will always be accessible. I will always be a commissioner that you can come and talk to and bring an idea and try to flesh that idea out. I worked for U.S. Senator Ron Wyden for 20 years. So I understand this whole component around community and elected officials. You have to have an open door. And where we're going to be under a Smith administration, we're going to be an open door for being a voice for those who are voiceless. We're going to be a champion for those who need housing. And we're going to be an open door for new ideas. She'll be an open door for people to feel like they really have somebody that they can relate to, that they can talk to, that they can send their kids to. I know how important it is for everyone to have a job. That's why I've been working with young people. I started a summer jobs program with 25 kids. Today, I've grown that program to 650 kids. There are a lot of kids in your community who now have permanent summer jobs. That's in permanent budget, as permanent can be. But you had someone who consistently, methodically, over the last 8 years grew that program to make sure that our young people who are from low-income neighborhoods, from underserved neighborhoods, that they have an opportunity to have an opportunity. That's what you get with Commissioner Smith. I was one of those kids. I came through the CETA program. I know how important that first job is. And if you all know what the CETA program is, you are old as I am. But old things work. And what we know is history repeats itself. Good jobs are good jobs. Vote for me, Commissioner Loretta Smith.
I want to also add my thanks to you coming out and participating in my 98 house parties with the thousands of people I talked to, with the 1,400 people who invested in my campaign. They invested because they knew that they had a real life person who had to work for a living, who got involved because it mattered to give back to the community that you lived in. The people who supported me from $5 to $5,000, with $5,000 being my ex-mother-in-law. It's the only $5,000 contribution I got. Gave the husband back, kept the mother-in-law. I am thankful because the people who didn't have a lot, right? So big business didn't endorse me and give me big checks. Big unions didn't endorse me and give me big checks. People just like you guys, $5, $25, $100. People who said, you know what? I want somebody who's had my lived experience. I want somebody who's not just going to go along and get along. I want somebody who actually has already been doing the work, which is why the Oregonian and the Portland Mercury and the Scanner, and let's see, what was the other one? I had 4 newspaper endorsements. I can't remember the other one. I got another one of those. But not just those, right? What matters most are the people who invested. And they invested because they know I'm doing this for the right reasons. We may not all agree on every issue, but you will always know where I stand. You will never walk away and go, you know, I wonder what Joanne thought about that, right? We have lived in polite Portland for too long. It is time for us to get over our politeness and get to the hard work of making sure we're building community, and we're building it for everybody, right? Everybody in, nobody out. Portland, a Portland for us all. Thank you so much. Please vote Joanne Hardison, Portland City Council.
Am I in your way from an air-conditioned room? I'll try to go as quickly as possible. Again, my name is Andrea Valderrama. I am running for Portland City Council position 3. I want to thank you all so much for hearing us talk at you for so long, for being in this cooped up, warm room. I really do appreciate it. As a candidate, this has been an incredible experience to hear from so many of Portlanders in my neighborhood, in outer west side Portland, in places that I've never been in before, because it matters to me to hear what are your concerns and how can we do a better job of representing you in this future Portland that we are in. It is drastically different and it is going to continue to change. So we need new leadership that is reflective of those changes. Again, as a senior policy advisor, I know what it takes to run these bureaus successfully, to make sure that we're implementing the right resources in an equitable way, to make sure we have the right people at the table, not just folks at the grass tops, but at the grassroots level. That has been something that has been so important to me as an individual. My career started in grassroots organizing. I'm very passionate about making sure that we make our community reflective of all of the diversity that is within it. And as a school board member, it is so vital to me that we are bringing along the next generation, that we are making sure that we're leveraging all of their skill set in cultural competency, in language abilities into our public sector, into our private sectors, and that we are growing as successfully as we can in this future Portland. I am grateful to have been endorsed by some wonderful organizations. AFSCME, who represents the largest number of city working class individuals. This is something that is personally important to me. I'm asking for your vote by tomorrow at 8 o'clock. This election is very important, and I really do appreciate you all taking time to hear what we have to say. Happy to stick around for questions. Thank you all again so much.
I just want to give one more round of applause for the candidates. We are going to move along a little quickly.
Do a break?
Do you want to take a break?
We got 5 minute break.
Okay, we'll take a little quick break. We'll go back and then we'll Hi.
I'm Steve Rice. I'm running for mayor of Montevilla. Please vote for me tomorrow. I just wanted to come in. I'm the executive director with the Business Association. I've been involved for, this is my 4th year with the association, and prior to that I've been on the Neighborhood Association board as a liaison between the neighborhood and the Business Association. And the first thing I'll say is that we're very interested in ongoing collaborations with the neighborhood, and after being off track, I guess, for a year or two, we're getting back on track, and definitely looking forward to more collaboration that we might be able to have with the Neighborhood Association and the board. And I also wanted to come in and just provide a quick update on some of the events that we have coming up through the rest of the year. Talk about our pedestrian safety plan that we are just beginning to gather input for. And one other thing, talk about our walking map and some other marketing stuff that we're doing. So in terms of events, this Saturday we have a block party event. It's called the Go Local Montevilla Spring Block Party. And we're going to have 81st Avenue closed off for one block between Oak and Stark Street, kind of where Roscoe's is right there on the corner. And we'll have 5 local bands and a bunch of vendors that are all local to Montevilla, thus the Go Local statement. So hopefully everybody can come out for that. This used to be we used to call it First Fridays, and after trying to make that event successful for a number of years, we're deciding to kind of take another route, and we're going to do a special event every season. So this will be our spring block party. Of course, we've got the street fair in the summertime, but before I start talking about that, let me say really quickly that the block party is Saturday from 4 to 9 p.m. It's free of charge, and it should be a lot of fun, so everybody can make it. The street fair is scheduled for Sunday, July the 29th. It's always the last Sunday in July. The time is 10 to 5 p.m. this year. Similar to, who's been to the street fair in the past? Okay. So it's going to be similar to previous years. The event continues to expand. We had 140 vendors last year. We're hoping for 160 this year, and estimating, crowds of about 15,000 people. Music on 3 stages, including the kids area that we call Kid Villa. And lots of food, lots of fun, lots of other entertainment, duck tank, etc. So,
Where is this?
it is on Stark. We close Stark Street between 82nd and 76th. And then we'll be on some of the side streets as well. And then for the fall, we have been doing, for the last 3 years, a trick-or-treat on Gleason Street event. We're going to take our successes and focus this year on a Harvest Fest. So instead of it taking place on Halloween, as the event has in the last 3 years, instead it'll be the Saturday before Halloween. So tentatively, that would be October the 27th, which is a Saturday. I say tentatively, it could be the 28th, but probably the 27th. And we'll have pumpkin carving and events for kids, and candy, and we're also hoping to do some sort of a jack-o'-lantern contest this year. So that's just at the very beginning phases of planning, so more information on that soon. Who has been to the Business Association website? Anybody? Okay. So only people that sit on this side. Montevilla.biz is our website. If you haven't checked it out, take a look. We've got great photography done by a local Montevillan of the various businesses and business owners, so it really shows the personality behind the businesses as much as possible. And you can see who is contributing back to the community by being a part of the association. Our members, right now we've got 111 members. Our goal in 2018 is to get to 150 members, which would make it one of the largest, if not the largest, outside the Pearl and downtown business association in Portland. So our small businesses, like Montevilla in general, are very community-oriented and are very interested in getting together and putting their minds together for the common good. A lot of our business owners live in Montevilla, and so they've got not only the business perspective, but also the neighborhood perspective as well. Our new president, Tina Gronzo, very active in the neighborhood, as are a lot of our board members, and not just in the downtown Montevilla area, but the other sectors too. Gleason, on the east side of Stark Street, and also we're getting a growing amount of participation from businesses on the east side. So one of the things that we are working on right now is a pedestrian safety plan, and our interest in this really came out of a worker in one of our businesses at Hungry Heart being struck and killed in a drive-by just off Stark Street as she was walking on her lunch break. This isn't the first pedestrian fatality in Montevilla in the last number of years, and so we want to make sure that we can do what we can in order to make the area as walkable as possible, especially along the commercial corridors of Gleason, Stark, and Eastside. I've attended one of the transportation meetings, and we're collaborating already with the neighborhood association trying to get the speed limit lowered to 20 miles per hour in the downtown area of Stark Street, and also trying to expand that to the entire Stark Street area between 76 and Highway 205. So that's just kind of the first step. Our goal this year is really to lay out a plan with a timeline. From my perspective, I've lived in the neighborhood for 13 years. I plan on being here for another 13, if not more. And so I'm trying to look at this sort of planning with the long-term perspective in mind. We had a city engineer from the Department of Transportation come to our meeting last month, and we learned a lot. But one critical thing that we learned that I want to leave with you all is that if you ask, it's amazing how much you can actually get done just by asking. It's not as difficult as one might think to get positive changes made. There are things that are more difficult and take longer. Those are the capital improvements like curb extensions, those speed bump calming bumps, things that cost more money for the city to put forward first. But if we can get that into the plan, then once it's planned, then it can be funded. Once it's funded, then it can become a reality. So there are actually a number of things that are slated right now, a few of which I was surprised to hear. They've already been funded by the city. Things like the 70s Greenway, which is actually on 80th Street, between Powell and Halsey. That will be a bikeway all the way through there with crosswalks and so forth. There's also apparently some additional changes on 85th and 86th on Stark Street to calm traffic. Just a couple of the projects that have been funded so far. There's a hotline, and I can get this to Amanda, and she can, if you guys don't have this already. But I learned that there's a hotline that you can call. If there's no parking sign that you want put, we can call and request that. If there's other signage, or if there's other painting, striping, these are things that the Transportation's maintenance department can take care of. They don't cost as much money, and they can be done more quickly. Some of the capital improvements, they can be funded. It's just a matter of getting them into the plan. So I think what I would like from the neighborhood association is feedback, and from neighbors, feedback. I'm going to pass around my card. If you've got a particular issue on your block or somewhere on your daily commute that you've noticed is unsafe for pedestrians, you can just send me a quick email, and eventually I think we'll probably get a survey so that we can reach a broader number of people in the neighborhood. But I did want to start here at the association, so I'll pass around my card.
Wonderful.
Timeline basically is just to get the plan together this year, and then we can start acting on it starting next year. I think I'm out of time, so
thank you very much. Okay, and we are now going to have a presentation from Ms. Diane Red on Tabor Stewardship Program. And Chris.
So we have 10 minutes, but our strategy is to maybe talk for about 6 and then leave 4 minutes for questions. And so David, can you time us for 6? Sure. Okay, that'd be great. So we're both with the Friends of Mount Tabor Park. Friends of Mount Tabor Park was established in 2000 to provide community support for the park, and we do a lot with public safety, we do a lot with public education, and we do a lot in terms of promoting the ecological health of the park. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The ecological health of the park in 2005 was measured by the Park Bureau as being poor or severely degraded. It's pretty awful, but maybe some of you think, like many people, that the park just normally looks so beautiful. It just happens. Well, it doesn't just happen. There's this group, and Chris is a member of the group, called the Weed Warriors. And the Weed Warriors meet every month on a Saturday morning, and they strategically go after blackberry, climbing clematis, English ivy, go on, and they dig it out. And if any of you have ever been gardeners, you know that sure enough, they'll come right back. And so this is a problem that's going to be going on and on. But having the park be ecologically healthy means that the native birds can live there. It means that the ground will absorb water, which will not flow into the sewers. And it means that the park will look more lovely. So this is such an important and very important program. Well, the city believed it was important. So for 7 years, we paid for a part-time coordinator for this program. But that funding ended in December of last year. And so right now, we have a very active volunteer corps, 500 volunteers as of the end of last year, 37 trained crew leaders, and we need a volunteer coordinator to wrangle all those volunteers, to coordinate with the city, to strategically identify where the work needs to be done. So, we need a solution, and our solution is to raise $100,000, and at first that seemed like a real gasp. Oh my gosh, $100,000. But what we're going to do is we're going to take that $100,000, we're going to put it in a fund at the Oregon Community Foundation. That fund is going to kick off $4,000 a year, and matched with money from dues from the Friends of Mount Tabor Park, we can, in perpetuity, fund a volunteer coordinator. There's always people who want to dig weeds. It's not hard to find volunteers, but you cannot find an unpaid volunteer coordinator. And so we are saying we are going to take care of that with this fund. So we've been raising money for about a month. We are at 65% of our goal. It makes it really easy to say that. We're at $65,000. And we're speaking to the nonprofits in the neighborhood, the neighborhood associations, Monteville Kiwanis, the colleges, the Courtyard Plaza, we're a continuing care community for seniors. And we're also local businesses, and many Monteville businesses have donated, and we're speaking to individuals. So we're looking for donations in all those places. So I'm here with Chris to ask you to support us, because as we heard from all these candidates, citizen involvement are us. We really need everybody to feel like the park is their own park. And so we're asking the Neighborhood Association to provide $500 to this fund. This is a one-time ask. We're never coming back again. And so we're hoping that you'll pull me up. And if any of the rest of you would like to participate, I have flyers here, which you'll find on the table if you didn't already get one in your hand. And so with that, Chris is going to be the man on the spot answering questions about the Weed Warriors, about the coordinator, about the awards that the Weed Warriors have won. Okay, do you want to ask a question first? Tell me about this award. You want me to take that?
You take that.
Well, the Weed Warriors, a couple years ago, won the statewide Solid Award, and also won, in a subsequent year, the statewide Citizen Involvement Award. So that, I know, it's really a great organization. And, what this speaks to is their longevity and the fact they're really fiscally responsible and they're volunteer managed. So,
I think also what it speaks to is people come to this thing and have a good time. And part of the reason is it's well run. you know, if you come to this event, and we get volunteers from literally all over the state, it's not just people from Oregon, we get probably every single high school in the city, Marriott's middle schools, BSU, University of Portland, PCC,
Moms and dads
yeah.
and kids.
But when you show up there, there's a plan, there's a place you're going to, and there's people who can walk you through what you're doing. So you are, for example, pulling the things you're supposed to, and not pulling things that are just now germinating, that are the native plants we're trying to preserve. I think it's a very successful I think it's recognized as successful because people come and they have a good time, and we're able to relate it back to a number of issues, because Mount Tabor, although not technically in our neighborhood, we're not really picky about that issue, about things that are not like our neighborhood, here in this neighborhood association, but it serves so many functions in the city. There's both a recreational facility, people get married there, and we'll get into, of course, the Soul Fox Derby. It's also, though, migratory bird flyway, major rest stop, heading south. It is, right, it is the critical part of the watershed for the Willamette Valley here on this side of the river. You know, every drop of water that stays on Mount Tabor doesn't go into the big pipe. So I like that park in particular because to me it strikes me as one of the most democratic parks in this city. It has use for everybody, whether you play tennis or you just want to hang out, or if you want to pretend that you're not actually in the city. You can accomplish pretty much any one of these things in that park. And I think that was, in part, the focus of it when it was first proposed as part of the Olmsted's plan for parks in the city. It's an idea that people in cities, that not only the rich, should have access to nature. This park does a good job. I think this program does a good job. And it is our hope that basically we can make it so that those of us who lead up there know we have job security. We can do this 10 years from now. But the health of the park is important, you know, and there will never be, there's plenty of money that the parks needs for lots of things. They'll never fund this. And, you know, we don't intend to fund things, you know, we're not interested in fixing potholes. But this is something that engages people from all around the city and makes them aware of what a valuable resource we have, as well as having real tangible benefits to all of us who live around here.
Well, that was well said. How about some more questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, tell me about the migrating birds.
There's a lot of them.
Well, if you want specific information, you have to come at 7 a.m. on Wednesday morning, and the birders meet at the parking lot at the Cradle.
Okay.
Yes, but it is a significant stopover for, it is on the flyway, yeah.
And we're not birders, but
That
I
would
did
be a
see
significant constituency that uses that park, however, yes.
I did see a baby owl up there a couple weeks ago. And I have seen a hawk's nest up there and hawks.
We're kind of looking at the two.
Yeah, go ahead. Other questions?
Okay, I got a question. Okay, go ahead.
Well, that piece of property that I've seen some things on the internet about off of 60th there, there's a strip that's a block wide and goes clear up. Is that part of Mount Tabor Park? And I've heard that it's gonna be sold off in apartments or some kind of garbage built on it.
You're talking about the entrance on 60th and Lincoln?
Correct.
Salmon.
Salmon.
Oh, it's Salmon, the house there.
Just north of Division.
Right. There is a house there that is owned by the Parks Department. It used to be the caretaker's house. Amanda Fritz did propose as part of her budget, looking for change in the parks budget, that they would dispose of surplus property. It's owned by Parks, it's not technically part of a park, but if you may or may not have heard, there was a hue and cry. She appeared at the Mount Tabor Neighborhood Association, and she's pulled that. So that has been pulled, so that is not the case anymore.
Because that was used for all kinds of different things. They've had plant shows on that strip of property there, they've had all kinds of...
There's a different... There's a different strip of property at Lincoln, the entrance there that used to be the nursery. Are you referring to
There
that
you
piece?
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little different.
That's a little different. That's also owned by Parks. It was once the nursery, as you know, for Parks plants. They went in a different direction, and we're gonna start using strictly subcontractors. Now the plan for, and you know there's a community garden there on a significant portion towards the entrance of the park. The plan now, through a lot of community involvement, et cetera, is that it is returning to two things. One, the community garden stays. There will be what they call a pot farm, which is to say trees in pots, not in the ground, but so it's going back to being a nursery for the city. And then there are plans for the final third, which is the park going on to 60th, being redone as a appropriate approach to the park. Sort of an inviting welcome to Mount Table. So it is not being disposed of, no. There's never been a plan to dispose of it.
Great. Well, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. So when might you talk about this request of ours?
Possibly new business.
Well, we'll leave. So if you make a decision right away, there's going to be a Mount Table Art Walk, and we're hoping to get all of our $500 sponsors and above. We hope to get the logo on our banner. It's going to be appearing in all the art walk, not all the venues, but many of the houses. So,
Thank
yeah.
you very much.
Thank you. I'll leave so you can talk about it.
Okay. All right. We're running about 40 minutes over time, so we'll try to be really quick. Updates from officers and chairs. I think the outreach committee's been doing really good. We have a new newsletter available over on the table. We did a first run of 500 copies, and about 400 have been handed out door to door to houses in the neighborhood, and many others have been distributed to local businesses. So we're pretty excited about that. We've got a lot of events coming up, and we're very happy to march in the 82nd Avenue Parade of Roses. It's a very fun event. I encourage anybody who hears about that again next year, please feel free to contact the neighborhood association about being in that. It's really fun for kids. I would encourage that. Tomorrow at over the next 3 days at PCC Southeast, there's a multicultural event, Culture Southeast 2018. Food, cultural activities, dancing, artwork. Sounds like a really good event. I encourage people to go.
Where is it going to be held up there? Where's it on the campus will it be held?
PCC Southeast, just where? I'm not sure. Where on the campus.
That could be that way. Yeah.
That And we hope to have an outreach meeting on the 27th. Usually we have that at the Montville Community Center. Again, we did the newsletter. We're focusing now, at least I am, on block parties. And you can also get your intersection and your community painted. The city is offering up workshops on how you do that and how to get that organized. So if you want any information on that, let me know.
Sure, so I'm the land use chair. We meet on the fourth Wednesday, and we meet down at the Portland Metro Arts at 91st and Stark. And so the next meeting will be on the 23rd from 7 until 8:30. The kinds of things we've been working on, so we've put together a pop-up park that was on Stark and 81st just a few weeks ago. It was part of Portland Design Week, and the Bureau of Transportation let us close off 2 parking spaces, which we took over and added some fun activities for kids. We had a seesaw, a tent until it blew over. And we were tied in with National Poetry Month, so we did some, we encouraged people to write haikus about Montevilla. So basically creating a community space out of something that normally vehicles just use, and trying to get a little more creative with a public resource like our right-of-way. And so we hope to be doing more of that in the future. National or International Parking Day is what this is based off of, and they do that in the fall. So we're planning on doing something like that again in September. We're also working on
public art murals and we've already internally identified a few good locations, but we're hoping to have a broader conversation as soon as next month with the community at a neighborhood association meeting and talking and hearing from a nonprofit, the Portland Street Art Alliance, who connects communities with artists, perhaps bringing in an artist who has done public art murals nearby. And then have some conversations at tables or in a larger group about what we want to see happen and some good places that are potentials. We've already had one property owner reach out to us this week, and like I said, we identified a short list, so we're working on that. Robin is leading that effort up, and I don't need to keep talking, so I'm actually getting a little bit, but yeah, next Wednesday is our meeting. We've also been working on some of these bigger policy issues that are really gnarly and complicated, like the residential infill project. I had intended to bring a recommendation. We only had a half an hour to talk about it in the committee, and we had some ideas, and I was hoping to work something out with them online in the meantime since our last meeting, and unfortunately, we have had a recurrence of our legal challenges. We had an agreement with Benjamin Carenza, who had concerns about last year's election. We met our requirements of the agreement. We gave him public records, and now he's asking a judge to set aside that agreement. So I've been really wrapped up in that the last couple weeks. So it looks like we might be heading for a public hearing. And our attorney's fees are increasing again, so we've been working with Southeast Uplift to access insurance funds. The city also has funds, and it's all kind of like taking a little too long to come together. So that's unfortunately what I've been spending my time on the last couple weeks. So, what's happening?
So I'm the Southeast Uplift delegate. I don't know if y'all have been involved in any of the conversations around the city budgeting, but especially paying attention to the Office of Neighborhood Involvement within that. But there was a request coming from the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, as well as these districts, that we would see some changes to the allocation of funds within the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, so that it would reprioritize East Portland. I think Joanna Hardesty actually mentioned something about East Portland being historically underfunded. We are seeing a reallocation of funds so that it's more equitable, which was a really big success, and we were celebrating that within Southeast Uplift, even though that means Southeast Uplift will be losing some of those funds to make it possible. We think it's an equitable future that we need to prioritize. There were some other changes that are coming as well. Supri last year was appointed the director, and she's only just with this recent budgeting process been able to re-contractually oblige the different coalitions basically to her agenda. So they're contracted through the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, and in that contract, the Office of Neighborhood Involvement is able to stipulate what they want to see the district coalitions achieve. And the district coalitions support the neighborhood, so that's where it becomes relevant. In this rewritten contract, she was able to set some of her goals, which was really awesome for me to see in writing. One, she outlined structures for inclusion. So there's been a lot of talk for inclusion, so now she's actually starting to get into the weeds of what those structures of inclusion will look like. And I think that's something that we neighborhood associations to definitely step up and get involved in this process to make sure we're holding the structures of inclusion open and accountable. Other things are outlining a plan for getting neighborhood associations more involved with city governance, which is something there's also been a lot of interest in. And finally, she's just setting long-term goals for the Office of Neighborhood Involvement to involve itself with systematic change. That was a little vague, but I think there's something there to just open up the door for that conversation for us to step in and say what our priorities are. Within Southeast Uplift, we've already been having that conversation about if we're revisioning the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, if we're revisioning these things, what is our vision? What are we putting forward? And so I got involved, and I've been involving as many people to get involved in the mission statement rewrite, been asking for support and feedback. Some of the words that I was able to bring to the table that the neighborhood was interested in was social and ecological well-being, and I'm happy to say that did make it into the mission rewrite. The full rewritten statement, it's not online yet, but it should be, is to collaborate with the Southeast Portland community to build informed, inclusive, and participatory neighborhoods that support our social and ecological well-being. I can put that down, can show it to you guys later. You can still see the old mission statement online, which has, in my mind, there was a lot of language in there which just didn't really age well. It was actually very uninclusive, and so a lot of it had to be rewritten, and also it had to reflect some of our new goals. So I'm excited to say that we've seen these changes come through, and this is just getting started. Thank you.
I am John Otter, I'm Public Safety Chair. So just going to touch briefly on what's been going on past month. Recently there's been a lot of news coverage on what's been going on in Montego Park and along the multi-use bike path, or MUP. There's been neighbors, neighborhood, they've been doing patrols, cleanups in the park, just going around and observing mostly. As a result, at night there has been less camping going on in Montego Park, and it seems to be moving out towards the multi-use path, which isn't really a long-term solution, but that's just been what's going on. I've been talking to neighbors. You can email me at john.rotter@montevillapdx.org. I will get back to you as soon as I can, and just talk to you in detail about your concerns, what's going on. I've been working with neighbors to set up neighborhood watches on their blocks. I've been talking to neighbors, coordinating with other groups in general that are in other people's areas. So if you have any questions about what's going on in your area, feel free to talk to me. I can give you data, statistics, more details. And speaking of that, I'm having a meeting. It's going to be meeting at Milepost 5 Thursday the 24th at 6:30 p.m. And we'll probably do something fun like go on a walk or something like that, and just kind of like talk about what's going on in the neighborhood and just give a visual to what's happening. So I look forward to seeing you there. And you can go to montevillapdx.org and you can find my contact information there if you're interested in participating. I look forward to seeing you guys there.
I don't have much of an update. I probably should get around to actually having a full parks meeting, but what I've been doing is trying to facilitate a project that a neighbor had approached me with that relates to parks. So I have an email out to our Southeast Uplift representative asking about specifically fiscal sponsorship for a type of recycling service that's local in the neighborhood, or storage requirements, what are the things we have to deal with. There are permits that they are able to issue to different companies, but as far as the processing restrictions, kind of want to figure out how to accommodate that, because as everyone knows, there's a need now that plastic isn't going overseas, it's kind of just sitting here, so we're actually paying money in a lot of cases to store it in Oregon, from what I understand. So if we can figure out something at this level to help reduce our local trash as well as our overall output, maybe it's a solution we can put forth in other neighborhoods to take a look at that. But it's using a specific type of thing called precious plastic processing that this gentleman Russell had brought to me and has agreed to be the fiscal sponsor for, which means he'd be responsible for any of the donations or fundraising we would do through the Neighborhood Association or Southeast Uplift. So what I really ought to do is probably have a meeting where we look for volunteers and or participants for that kind of project. And also I need to check back in with the person who had emailed me about the Dropbox for Sharks Exchange, right? I believe there's something now where every single fire station for Portland's going to get one, so they're not sure if they need to do it anymore, but we're going to see if the area will come over in the park. But other than that, I've yet to get people together, so we'll look for that soon.
Two more quick things, sorry. So a lot of people have been asking about whether or not we're doing neighborhood cleanup this spring. Unfortunately, the volunteer who was spearheading that had to step off the board, and so we're working with Southeast Uplift. We were able to connect today with the person over there. We're going to probably just do a fall one. A couple of neighborhoods do the fall cleanup, so there are still a few coming up in May and June if you really need to get some stuff out of your site, and then after all your summer fun, then maybe you'll have some more stuff to bring to us. So that's the current plan for that. And then also we're finally scheduling a meeting to look at our bylaws. So folks who like process, who are interested in that kind of thing, we wanted to kind of tidy up our bylaws, especially based on some recommendations that came out of the elections committee last year. So if anyone's interested in that, please let me know. We're scheduling a meeting now for in the next few weeks.
All right, great. Thanks, everybody.
I'm sorry, I'm pretty tired. Would anybody like to make any comments?
Can I make an announcement?
Oh, yeah, great.
I'm going to kind of piggyback on a couple of things, but this member of Kiwanis, the Monteville Kiwanis Club, has been around since 1929, and we're having our 50-something pancake breakfast this Sunday morning. And it supports us. I'm trying to practice my elevator speech, so if we're in an elevator, I get everything covered. We build a camp out in this community, build it at Mountville for campers that right now it's campers with multiple disabilities. And so we get letters from parents saying, Johnny, learn to eat with a fork. I can't thank you enough. Mary, you don't tie our shoes. It's an expensive camp because some of the kids that campers, they're bigger and older by birthday, medically fragile. It's a really good project. We also support internships for, after they get their MD, they have to go back to school and specialize for pediatric oncology and hematology. For children's cancer, I've been doing Becker Children's Hospital, the longest sponsor of Monteville Little League, I guess Haverhill now. And we are working with other organizations, other hospitals on a sign project. You may not realize this, but the next projected epidemic in the world is physical injuries, which are happening right now with people having motorbikes and things on unpaved roads and unengineered things. And this orthopedic surgeon is called a nail, and it's a surgically implanted thing, what the sign project means. And they stick it down if a major bone, especially in the dead winter, breaks in the arm or the leg, they can put that in, and within 2 or 3 weeks, they're out and they can do it, as opposed to this contraction, it's a couple of years. So it's a really life-changing, civilization-changing kind of situation. It's very exciting. And here's some of these. It'll be a lot. It's only $5 people. I'm sure at least enough of you have some friends where you can spend like $10 and both of them. Yeah, I'll take it out. Okay, thank you so much. But I want to, and I also, this is a volunteering thing, and I have to find all this stuff, but my grandfather started the store down here on 80th and Stark in 1910. I have a lot of pictures and historical things that I would be willing to share with the historical committee as soon as I get all moved into where I am. So just let me carry on. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, great. That'll adjourn our membership meeting. Thank you everyone for coming. We're gonna have a board meeting just after, hopefully as quickly as possible. Thank you. You're welcome to stay and listen. Yeah, thanks again.
So I'm probably gonna send out an email tonight with all of the stuff we just announced. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
When is your outreach meeting? 27th?
27th, yeah.
Okay.
It's in the
Yeah, great. Can you do that later? Yeah. And then, what did you say about? Do what? Oh, yeah. Great.
We have a new meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, we gotta wait for everyone first. So, Brad.
I want to.
Each outside real fast.
grab water, we need to.
Yeah, yeah.
Where are we starting from? Yeah. Do you want me to start with health system?
We have minutes. Can you show me the ones that we have meeting and the next week's meeting? I'll make sure we get it all ready for the next meeting for us to approve. Oh, right on, yeah, I'm pretty sure I did send it out, but I'll just make sure. Yeah, I didn't make it. But let's do that, let's just put the minutes for next, for last meeting and this meeting, let's approve both next meeting. How priceless is each time? Is there best practices? Yeah. We would just do the best we can. Okay, I move we approve the agenda.
Second, to approve the agenda?
All in favor? Favor approving the agenda? Unanimous? Okay, we have board vacancies.
Yeah.
We have not only 2 standing board vacancies, I think we need to reach out to 2 other board members who have been in communication with. Make sure we find that or take some of that vacancy.
I thought Antigonus was interested in stepping down or stepping back. I thought that they had said that before. Because I got one from prior. I do think it's just kind of a step back. But I don't want to speak to them at all.
If there's any lines of,
Yeah. I can.
lines of communication,
Yeah.
I'll ask them to, maybe they may have just been stepping back to re-examine and not want to like lose their position, so maybe they don't want to get back in now, but.
yeah, and as I said before, I understand people getting paid for it or something, but just please, let me know. So.
And I've said I was going to reach out to Mike, I haven't done it.
Just got back.
Well, I just,
Just to check, just to check in. I think it might be time.
Yeah.
If we do have volunteers willing to take those spots, yeah, then I don't want to. Yeah. Okay, so the next thing is.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so board vacancies, I am going to nominate Patricia Sanders for the board. Ms. Sanders?
Pat?
Pat? I just nominated you for the board.
Oh, congratulations, Pat.
Is that a willing, is that still a willing nomination? Are you still willing to sit on the board?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. And I will reappoint Patricia Sanders to a vacant board position.
Pat's been doing some great work around Montebello history. She spoke to us a couple months ago, and she's been really available and responsive, and so I was thrilled to hear that she was willing to join us in this endeavor.
Also interesting project. It's a cool project.
Yeah.
It is.
Second?
Second. Oh, you got second.
Okay, all in favor? Or any other discussion?
Any discussion?
All in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Welcome to the.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
The staff, Sanders elected.
Yeah,
So
well,
this is like a temporary position for.
you can choose a term for a year or 2 years from.
So what we would be doing is filling one of the vacant positions, and of the people who have left, I think we must have had 2-year.
Yeah, because the plan is to stagger terms so that half the board, so goes on so you don't have a whole turnover at once.
Since we were all new, we ended up having half of us to one, half of us to two.
So yeah, I think the leader would be filling one of the 2-year positions.
Which would take you through October 2019, so it would be like a year.
Excellent, so we have, are we passing on the residential infill project?
So, again, like, just to summarize, this is a really big project. It's actually super contentious. there are a lot of pieces to it. So this started out as an effort to think about how we can increase density in single-dwelling neighborhoods that are close to services, while at the same time preserving neighborhood character and not getting, not just going for the four-story buildings along our commercial corridors. So these are everything from allowing 2 accessory dwelling units, one in the backyard, one in the basement, to allowing duplexes in the mid-block on places where they previously weren't allowed, to up to allowing triplexes on corners. So allowing kind of this missing middle housing, these more units that don't necessarily appear, you'll see a lot of historical 100-year-old buildings that are not super, that are, really pleasant, and, they've got good facades that are broken up, and they're great to walk down if you think of them as really pretty buildings, to kind of encourage more of that, and not lose our single dwelling character. There are concerns about demolitions. There are concerns that these things wouldn't do enough to add new houses, and there was one economic analysis that was saying this really wouldn't actually end up adding that many units, but it's just a really complicated, big project, and I kept sitting down to try to type up the notes of our conversation and trying to draw some conclusions, looking at other sources, and it's, there are a lot of positives and potentially, if I remember, negatives, and some equity issues around where this overlay where you can do more is being applied. So I just couldn't pull it together with everything that's going on to bring a letter, but I do want to encourage folks, tonight's actually the last night to weigh in on it, and there's a ton of information out there, and on the city website on residential infill project, or looking at a lot of the advocates and people who are concerned. If you just Google residential infill project, there's a bunch of news articles, you'll hear pros and cons. But I have felt like we needed 3 hours to grapple with it, with people coming in and talking to us before we could really get to anything. And so I just wasn't super confident that we had a strong statement to make.
Well, it was a statement that we think it needs more discussion.
Okay, you're right.
Could we make that statement not necessarily opposing or endorsing, but just asking for more comment time?
And I certainly was planning on we like these things, we're concerned about these things. But I don't know, but at this point, without having something to react to, I'm not sure how to craft something that's going to be worth anything to, just us saying hey, you need to take this back to the drawing board. It's not super actionable. It could be. And honestly, I think there are potential positives. I don't know. My goal is to discover anything.
No, I don't want to scuttle it either. I could provide you the thing I was talking about in chat that I am considering specifically, because there's a very specific case to say, hey, I think we need to go back to the drawing board. Because when I do, so a friend of mine compiled a lot of liquid data, a lot of ArcGIS type of things, and they took the residential infill affected zones and overlaid it with what was single occupancy dwellings or apartments, multifamily, so on and so forth, different demographics, and then other data that had come from boards like PALF and a couple of other ones that had done some more specific research in demographics, in fact, like gentrification, as far as what that really means. It means that they measured the price of the land versus the building price, and then what the zoning was being changed to. So the zoning potential versus the base of the land price, and then that middle part of where the building price was. And so when I overlay them, the problem I see is that in Montevilla specifically, you have a large portion of that section by 84, and the section that's closer across 82nd to 94th in there, basically back where my house is. All of that is at risk for gentrification as far as the index goes, which really means that those prices are changing faster than incomes are changing for those folks. So I think there's some good correlated data that point out to say, hey, the way that you're thinking of zoning these things as a whole lot seems to affect these prices in a way that is not necessarily positive.
For most of the stuff that's excluded, let's see. I think your area is excluded because it's multi-dwelling, right? Like, when you're looking at where you are, it's already multi-dwelling, it's already capable of hosting multiple units. A lot of that right by the highway is R1, so they have one unit per 1,000 square feet.
I imagine it's less about that, more about the fact that that's going to be a blanket zone for that whole area, and that's not necessarily how we thought it. And beyond that, it's not necessarily the real issue, it's the ripple effect of rents that causes when you have this new tier development that includes the cost of tear down, as well as whatever the actual cost of the developer is at the time. It creates this compounding swing upward where everything is more expensive.
So are you north or east?
Yeah, so
On 94.
Yeah, I remember specifically talking about this back where the city owns that complex.
Right, I mean, all of that is multi-dwelling, so it's not affected by this project.
It isn't, but if I were...
And also, I mean, I'm not meaning to cut you off, but I guess my point is that whole area has been zoned multi-dwelling and it could have been developed much denser this whole time, and yet, it's not been transformed in the last years.
I suppose it's more the issue of letting that take its course just means that will continue to create this incentive to build more profitable things. And if there's no kind of dealing with the price increase in land, that's going to affect everybody else's house. Okay, so you mentioned affordability. Is there any distillation of the land use discussion or is that...
I just didn't bring it because it didn't...
Yeah, you said you don't have time.
Not by tomorrow.
Right.
And not that we can vote on.
Okay. Then it doesn't seem like we're to vote on.
But I would really encourage people to go right home and so, and just check it out.
Because if we could, it would be nice if we could just go for a sentence or two and drop your objection. It would be nice. I'd really love for us to have a statement. But
I
if
think a
it's not
statement
ready...
that doesn't have meaning isn't.
Sure.
Oh, and there is the opportunity for us to submit something directly to council, assuming it goes through the Planning and Sustainability Commission. There's still the council round of approval, and at that point, we'll know if they listen to all the comments this time around and what the outcome is. So we can aim for that as we talk about this more.
Can we bring this back to you tonight?
Yeah.
Please.
I would like to say maybe we could make a statement about the way it's conducted this time. If you understand, the first comprehensive plan actually came from the government and neighborhood systems overlay. That was really developed during that whole period of helping to become a more innovative city as well as health concern. And this time they didn't. They got more work together with professionals and experts who are definitely worthwhile, but I don't think it's a full consideration of the project. Where I think the community's direction is good.
I would really disagree with that. I mean, it's been like a 3-year process. They've done hundreds of public meetings. It's totally, I mean, they have groups that are from all sorts of perspectives that come together. Yes, there were developers involved. There weren't just developers involved.
I hear you, but most of these community meetings have been effectively feedback. And they're not necessarily, they don't have the weight.
It's been,
Well, I'd like to hear more about those. Yeah. But yeah, let's move on to the next thing.
But I guess, I don't know if you were making a proposal for tonight.
I would like to tell them what they need.
So do you need all of us to do that?
No, I mean, I can go do it on my own. I can go do it as a neighborhood association member, whatever it is. But I would, if we were supposed to, as a neighborhood association, provide a recommendation, I'd recommend we take more time to look at those numbers in that way and maybe provide an analysis to those communities of how they do it. Basically something to hold them to the idea as far as development. Right now, it's just the market provides. You set it up and they knock it down.
It is a...
Yeah. That should
You're not
do
changing
the price
that.
increase, that's what they say. Can you make a motion? Oh, well, so what? We agree to make a statement? Yeah, I mean, you gotta just still stand. Oh, I mean, I would motion that we don't support the rich side that hasn't seen it, but that's a different. Okay, we have a motion to go in opposition to whatever against the. Isn't that right?
I don't know if he's suggesting he wants to bottom line on whatever, but...
You know, right? I would want more input, like I probably should go into land use meetings, whatever, I feel like that this was something we're going to be at. But in any case, yeah, that is how I do it. I would motion that they go through certain things out, and have specific deliverables to certain people as far as like comments. And you could point to the areas where you want to provide specific.
Directly, if we have a letter of support tonight or opposition, I need you to follow my notes so we can vote, so I can propose it as a motion and vote on it.
Oh, right now.
Yeah, or else I was saying, please, I would love to hear more about what you think, I would love to hear about the things, and bring it back next week.
Yeah, that's good. So I can.
Okay, no, that's fine. My main worry is that you're right, and when you're thinking about it, my question is over time how those differential rates affect the rent without anything else happening. I think that it's going to be more the same. I mean, in fact, worse in some cases where there's like strategic redevelopment locations and the ripple effect of the whole block. So like that's where I'm seeing. I'm not a city planner, but I do math. Okay. So I'll make the statement and then email it, or are we doing this right now?
If you want it tonight, we need to do it right now. If not, sending everything to you, we're talking about it and more. Let's love to hear about more. Great. Next agenda item, historic resources inventory.
Yeah, I mean, similarly, I've just been working with our attorney, and basically the budgeting process through the city, we talked about this at our land use meeting. The Bureau of Planning and Sustainability has proposed a budget item that's $80,000. It's for, I should pull up my summary email. It's to support a program. So back in 1984, a bunch of volunteers worked with the city to conduct a historic resources inventory to get a better sense of what was going on in the city, what the state of resources were, why they were special, trying to create this inventory. A bunch of weird legal stuff happened about having to get an owner's permission to like even talk about the property, and some of that has been reversed through the state legal process. And so basically now they're trying to figure out, are there ways there are a lot of really interested neighbors who want to do inventories of their properties, of their neighborhoods, and kind of see what's out there still and see what they can celebrate. And here it is. And so I met last month with Brandon Spencer Harrell, who's the main historic resources guy at the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, and he suggested that they put this budget request in. The auditor wasn't super supportive. The money would go to coming up with a training program for neighborhood volunteers, coming up with the forms that they could use, and basically kind of getting people to turn in data, and they really wanted to use their map app, where they could layer information about the property and put in descriptions and photos, and work with archives, the city archives, to try to link up what they have in terms of photos and information. And so it's a small ask in the big scheme of things, $80,000 for the year, and this is up the alley of the kinds of things that we've been talking about with land use. So this is a fairly simple request. So I guess I would like to move that we write a short couple of sentences to support this budget request as a neighborhood who's interested in our historic resources.
Second. Any other discussion?
What is, as a budget item for
the city budget for the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability.
Okay. As no other discussion.
The ask is that we tell council to support the budget item.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Any other discussion? No? All in favor? Okay, all opposed? Abstained?
I guess I'll be Okay, I'll write that tonight and copy you guys as I write to council.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, want to give a brief update on the news side?
Yeah, so I've been trying to work with PCC because they've been very interested in helping us organize the Housing and Houselessness Forum. Unfortunately, getting in contact with some of the coordinators has been really difficult around that time. Robin thankfully stepped in and has connected us with ERCO organizers who offered 2 dates, June 9th, which was our setback date, the one that we've been working with. Now it's like increasingly coming up. The other date they offered was June 30th. Knowing we're working with ERCO and also knowing this is technically outside of Montevilla bounds, David had also a really great suggestion of reaching out to the Portland Action Plan and seeing if they want to potentially support and involve themselves either in the facilitation process or just give some support. With that in mind, I mean, I think if we're also outside of the Montevilla area, it would make sense to partner with people who are in those bounds as well. I would recommend that we move back to June 30th, but I wanted to get y'all's feedback on that. If you're like that, or if you really like the June 9th date for whatever reason.
That doesn't seem like a big pushback to me, so if it makes it better, I think it's better to do it good on good.
Yeah.
Try to meet that day.
Yeah, and getting organizers and community members who wanted to, sign up for the event, they had a lot of interest, but without that secure date, it was sort of hard for me to get them to be able to write it in their calendars, I'm sure you can imagine. So at this point, it would be nice to give them as much of a heads up as possible to respect their time.
So can we kind of start outreaching to people about the 30th, if that's what we decide?
We still have to confirm, but they pretty much offered those dates as available, so if we plan the June 30th date, it is already correct. Yes. Yeah, it would be the main Yeah, so it is outside of the Montebello bounds.
Just have we thought about reaching out to them as they want to participate?
Yeah, David had some feedback that the individual neighbor association, we can definitely reach out to the individual one, but also just that the district coalition for East Portland is incredibly active, and they would be helpful to step up and take a part of that role. I also have time to be able to reach out, there's another board meeting in Southeast Southwest as well, to get surrounding Tabor neighborhoods at least aware, if not on board.
Great. Please let me know if this is the second you have that, because I've been pestering our 3 elected representatives from the state for 2 years for this issue. And so I will be trying to get them involved. That's awesome.
The other thing that we were talking about too, Robin's available on Mondays, I'm also available on Mondays to have meetings for the planning of this. I wanted to make this inclusive, but also, so if you guys are interested in coming to this planning meeting, we'll be able to discuss outreach and facilitation. I'll be able to send an email out to the board letting y'all know, and would be interested in sending that out to membership as well if they're interested in it.
Sure. That's all great. Great, please think of any budget requests that you need for the finance meeting.
Yeah, we'll raise that.
Did we do a $500 budget?
We have the 500 blanket budget, and when I checked out ERCO in the past, they didn't have as many of the same, PCC was offering to cut the costs down significantly by partnering with us, so it is going to probably be more, but their costs are still in a pretty healthy range, so I can't imagine it would be over 500, so we would ideally still have money left in the budget. We may need to reassess that budget if we're talking about outreach, but at least we're not going to be, we'll be able to do that next quarter.
Thank you so much for your work.
Yes.
Should we start planning our outreach with a very specific budget?
Well, I mean, technically we have the 500 budget right now, and we don't need to pay for the facility up front.
Okay.
And knowing that it seems like we have support that if the facility pushes the budget over the 500 bounds, I can reapproach y'all and ask for that support for the facility. Hopefully y'all wouldn't downvote me, because then we wouldn't have
That would be a little awkward.
Then we wouldn't have money for the facility and it'd all for nothing. But I'm still hoping to keep it within that 500 range. And I also know that ERCO has opportunities for partnership as well to keep it like lower cost for nonprofits. So I would be trying to take advantage of those if possible.
Great. Does anybody have anything else on that item?
Yeah, and if you have any interest, feedback, or ideas for the Housing and Houselessness Forum, Jonathan in the past has reached out to membership to get their interest and to kind of poll them. If y'all have people talking to you about these kind of issues, just keep the information flowing, let me know what's going on. If you could just email me so I can make this as informed as possible.
Okay, cool. So, new business really quick. We were paying for the DOJ charitable activities section. We had a late filing that needs to be paid. How much is it?
So the
$20?
total fine is
$40? $20 for a late fee, $20 for fine. Anybody have any problems paying that? I move we pay it.
I want to have a $50 late fee, so I think we should wait.
I move we approve the $40 for the DOJ charitable activities. Okay, all in favor? Great, it's unanimous.
John, I'll leave $20.
Great, I got a checkbook here. Met the table for the street fair. I would like to have a booth.
What's the street fair
For the
again?
street fair, the street
July
fair.
29th. Can we talk about the one this weekend?
Yes, we can.
Mon Village, Sunday, May 20th, Creative Science School, 1 to 4. It's a free booth for us. David and Jonathan have agreed to attend. I wasn't sure if they were committed to the whole 3 hours or more people who would like to help and at those times. Yeah,
It's fun to hang
more
out.
people to hang out.
Yeah.
Yeah, if y'all want to go to breakfast and then go, that's the same day. Yeah, if we
Yeah,
get breakfast and we go to Mona Village.
Basically a
Yeah.
I mean, whatever, okay, so, yeah, with Mom Village, I was gonna pitch
It's serious.
maybe a little more volunteers.
Do they actually have a mentor? I've never been there.
Yeah, very good. I think there's a dunk tank there, so I was gonna volunteer for a dunk tank trip. Same with the street fair. We're hoping to do maybe a fundraiser or something. With being the dunk tank, so.
It's like my new inside joke.
Yeah.
So the one on the 20th is what time?
Sunday, 1 to 4 at the Creative Science School. 90 seconds.
So I met the booth at the street, on the street fair at $70. And I would like to try to negotiate them down to that, from that. But I wouldn't mind paying $7 for a booth.
Is this the July one?
Yes.
Okay. Well, yeah, we have been there. I'm actually gone and
Okay. So, I move that for $70 for a booth for the Convocation.
second.
Any other discussion, objections, reservations?
I also would like to.
Reservation says, funds are
That is true, although I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the $70 will be reimbursable from Southeast Upward for our outreach motivation.
Yeah.
Great. So not only that, plus the money that we spent on the newsletter should be reimbursable, as well as good and truck and data. So,
Let's compile it and then make our
somewhere between $1,200 and $1,700 to get a slush from Southeast Upward. But if we don't use it, we don't get it. We have to spend it. But that's definitely a good idea.
Then the legal fees,
Amanda and all of them are working on that.
So we were a little bit waffling. We did request the full amount from the city and the full amount at that time. And then Paul kind of sent it back to Molly and needed, maybe, I don't know, there were some things missing and I wasn't in the loop on that, I don't know, but she's said she would send that along and we would resubmit, and then also we've made a claim, or we're making a claim this week to the insurer. We were kind of like, do we really need to make a claim or do we just rely on city money? But now that we have increasing fees, we need to make. So basically our attorney is, we're already $850 in the hole to her, and she's like, understanding, but it's not a very fun project for her to work on, so she needs to get paid. So we're facilitate that, she can get it done. Do we have a balance to cover that last 850 before we get that all this money back?
Not in checking, we would have other local savings.
So, how much is in savings? Very, very Well, let's hold off if she sees what I think on this. I'm just going to have that bill hanging out for too long, but.
I was under the impression that some of that funding, or money to the mayor was going to be reimbursed, so that's the one.
So this is what I was talking about. So we're getting all of it back.
Okay.
And we're getting a lot of it back from insurance and the rest presumably from the city fund that was passed in like 96 to support, for this exact circumstance, to support neighborhood associations that no one has ever had to use before. So,
there's formalities in these requests, so it's just been really difficult.
It's so funny how long it takes.
And with the Southeast Uplift too, they've commented to me a few times that it's taking an incredible amount of their own time and manpower, some of that actually admin staff, money and time being relocated, allocated to figuring out this situation. So it's an incredible loss for the officer of development.
I need something. I was gonna choose everyone. Okay, one thing I do need is Antigonus, if we are not able to reach out. Antigonus has the responsibility of applying for reimbursement for the closed captioning services. And I could look back to my emails to see who was actually doing the reimbursement, but I would love for something to say on my projects.
Has it been reimbursed?
There's never been
No.
any reimbursement requested.
Okay, so when I reach out to them, I'll ask about that, and I'll just report back on the status.
Please do, and you could also just find out on an ongoing, because if we have another request for accommodations, we would love to jump on and make sure we're accommodating visual hearing or visually impaired members.
I'll ask them to write down how they do this, all that.
Great. Mount Tabor request. $500, I believe, was the request from Mount Tabor.
Unfortunately, I don't think we can do it right now with all these things out.
I have a solution. I would like to talk to the other neighborhood associations, the two neighborhood associations, and kind of like work together if people are on board with this, from the board, to go and do collective fundraising. If they would be, and organize it at Milepost 5 or something like that, and get everybody on board. That way we can get other neighborhood membership lists involved. I'll go around and flyer. I'm personally going to donate $100 on my pocket. That's just personal. That's not from the neighborhood association. No, I'm doing. Yeah, I would like to do that, and I think that would be a good start. And anybody else who wants to work with me on that, we can do that. See how long it takes. How long do you have until you want to reach 100? It's just like the thing you're just trying to get.
We would like to have it done 7 years.
7 years now. Okay.
So really, they're looking at the end of July.
So we could possibly pull off a fundraiser, and if that is just below the 500 mark, we bump it over to 500.
Yeah, so I would like to get something set concrete in the next couple weeks. Come to the board with an exact date on that by next board meeting, and then hopefully have something going on 6 weeks from now at the latest.
I have a question. Have you all reached out to Southeast Uplift to do, I didn't see all of the board
As I have not been at these neighborhood association meetings. Likewise, have I not been most of the friends on Tabor stuff, because I've been literally out of town. The way this campaign has gone is, I think, the first step, which we're just moving on from, was the waves. That is to say, most of the people on the top of the building, they think they can afford sizable donations. The next step is then to go around, so this is the last neighborhood association of the other neighborhood associations. We've been to South Tabor, we've been to Fourth Tabor, and presentation has
Mount Tabor, which amazingly enough is pays a lot. Most neighborhood associations are not necessarily sitting on company cash that are looking for lots of different reasons. Some of them spending it, and other people in school. But in any case, we've also reached out, so I can tell you that just started reaching out to businesses, so Fine Pie already given, the Capitol Theater's already given money, so, and the next step, as I understand it, is once we reach $80,000, is when it will become more of a small donation social media thing, which we are rapidly approaching, although I have no idea how quickly the first one, there's only one for that, the first part, that includes a couple of people who gave checks. I think what's going to be helpful is not this neighborhood association with $500, this is me speaking as a neighborhood, so the person from the neighborhood. It's more if the board, one, endorses the campaign, and then makes a point of notifying the membership that it's an endorsement. You're exactly right, taking $100 from you, $100 from you is literally at that point where we're going to start at the end to drag it across the line. So that's where I think, not that anybody from the board is helpful, that every donation is helpful, but more than I would think it's the endorsement point and the awareness so that people know that it's actually very, 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 very simple with money. You can go right to the website and figure out PayPal. It's been made super simple for small donations. It's just people knowing about it. Really.
And now we'll be tabling it in the village as well as planning for, so like by July when we wrapped up, we could also offer to just bring if you have extra flyers, bring those and have those tabled out and try to speed a bit to the project as well.
Yeah, but I think what the board could do right now is take motion, endorse the campaign. And that we don't have a newsletter until far in the future.
It's on there.
That doesn't mean that the board couldn't take a measure to send out an email to the membership lists, saying, we've endorsed this thing, you should check it out, here's the website.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I motion that.
And then any fundraisers as well.
Okay, yeah.
I'm all for that too.
Okay, two motions then. I motion that, the MNA, Wonderland Association endorses the Mount Tabor Park Stewardship Fund. And we send a letter out to our membership, making them aware. So that's my first motion. Second. Okay, all in favor? Okay, cool. And then, my second motion is to, facilitate a fundraiser, and I will bottom line that. And hopefully, in working with other neighborhood associations, getting that out over our membership list, working with the outreach committee, and just basically doing a bunch of other things, with your group's help, and getting a fundraiser within the next 6 weeks. Yeah, and that's my, and in doing it, yeah, doing it. So, that's my second motion. To set up a fundraiser, and with, as representative of the Montgomery Neighborhood Association, and going around to other neighborhood associations, like to the other neighborhood associations in surrounding areas, and setting a fundraiser for the Mount Tabor Parks.
Okay, there's a specific budget for
no, I'm not gonna ask for a budget, so.
Cool.
That's
Got a
my
motion and second. Any other discussion on the issue? All in favor? All right, unanimous. Great. I don't see any other new business. Does anybody else have any other issues?
So, Olive, so you said you would come in on the village.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
anyone else?
I thought y'all said we were going or
Yeah, not a thing to like.
Cool.
Great.
Then I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Second that.
All right, all in favor?
I